did you have any exposure to art or experiences at Valpo that maybe led you to an art collection?
I was an engineer. So, unfortunately, I was either on Mound Street or I was in the engineering building, and not much in between. So, no, I didn't. And it's a shame because my roommate, we all had, engineers actually did get to branch out and take other classes, and we had, I don't forget what you call it now, the freshman core. We had something like that back then. And the nice thing about Valpo is whether you're an engineer or a nurse or a business major, or you're in one of the humanities and arts and sciences, you've got all of this stuff here on this campus. It's a comprehensive university. So shame on me for not taking advantage of that while I was here. My roommate, who was also an engineer, took a photography class. What's the name of the?
George.
Yes, and it was great. And we'd come home and he'd be developing his stuff, and I almost audited the class with him because it was just so interesting. Unfortunately, I didn't take advantage of as much of that as I should while I was here. So again, look, you guys have some great resources here on this campus, some very knowledgeable people. Take advantage of that while you're here because you're never going to have this opportunity to be in this type of an environment again. So shame on me for being a late bloomer and focusing on just a few little narrow areas of my life back then. Yes. Oh, never. Yes.
So when it comes to collecting art, so everybody's got opinions, everybody's got advice. What's the best advice you've received when it comes to collecting art? And also then conversely, what's the worst advice you've received?
Interesting, because the worst was from you, I think, a few years back. So that'll be fun to answer. This is actually a friend of mine from the Milwaukee Art Museum who shared the ride down with me. So the best advice is the advice that I would share with anyone. If you're thinking about buying art or you're looking at buying art, buy what you like. Just buy what you like. If you don't like it, even if someone, my art advisor, she knows. She goes, I'm going to tell you about prices and values, but if you don't like it, don't buy it. So I did not heed that advice. In fact, this is a piece that I really don't like at all. And if I end up deaccessioning and selling a piece, it'll be this one. That's just me. Greg seems to love it. He put it front and center. It's in the brochure. So it's personal taste. And it's in there because it's actually a very important piece by a very important artist. Frank Stella, the famous geometrist. All of his stuff is about geometry and different shapes. And a great example of his work, it just isn't appealing to me. So it's actually up in a back hallway in my house when it's back in Milwaukee. And it's probably going to be one of the ones I end up either giving to a museum or selling along the way. Because I didn't heed that advice. That was very sage advice. The worst advice is, I know people that collect like this. All they're trying to do is make money off of collecting art. So they're trying to find who's going to be the next Jeff Koons or the next Andy Warhol or the next whatever. And they're trying to find them young and early. And that's like a 1 in 1,000 shot of getting that right. And all they're going to be is poor and frustrated at the end of the day, rather than buying this to appreciate it and live with it. Buying art as an investment is not that great of an investment, typically. So that's the worst that I've seen. Did that answer your question? Yes.
What about Keith Haring appeal to you?
So I like Keith Haring. Keith Haring actually has ties to Milwaukee. When they built the equivalent of the Brauer Museum, it's called the Haggerty Museum of Art in Milwaukee in the late 80s. Keith Haring actually flew in and painted the fence that they put around the entire building. And he was just there doing his story is he was originally a graffiti artist, and he graffitied on the subways in New York. He did a lot of chalk drawings where they had advertising in New York. He painted over a lot of advertisements. Very great pop artist, and this is certainly a good example of his style, as is this. This is one of the last things he did. It's his retrospective where they took kind of the best of all of his pieces. He put it together. I actually have I have a photo of him painting this exact piece on the floor of his studio just very shortly before he died. And it just was a great story. It was a great Milwaukee tie. The fact that that fence was painted, he had students that would come and help him paint it over the course of a few weeks, and it was never graffitied. Nothing was done to that, and it's in great condition. It's so big they can't display it. It's away in the vault right now. And just all of that together, I knew I had to have a Keith Haring piece. So this is the first one I got, and I was satisfied. And then I saw this one at a gallery, which just, I mean, this is a great piece, but if you look at the colors in this, the clarity of this one, I mean, it blows this guy away. So, you know, maybe this one will move on eventually because I don't need to. And in fact, I think some of these images are even in this piece. And if I'm not answering your questions, or if this is getting horribly boring and you want to change direction, just let me know. So the last thing I want to do is put anybody to sleep in here. Yeah.
In visiting with you earlier, we talked about your travels and the fact that you make your own photographs. What I'd like to know at this point in your life, how does this collection of art and your own efforts to make art and your professional life all kind of work together?
Yeah, so at this exact point in my life, they're actually working against each other. I'd love nothing more than to spend a big chunk of my time, maybe 20 hours a week, just taking my photographs that I've done over the past however many years and finding the best ones and putting them into some sort of a media and making them more accessible, either online or selling them or doing something. I'd love to do that it was my hobby for years and years, and now I just don't have the time, or I don't take the time to do that. So I think in my retirement, one of the things I would love to do is continue teaching, because it's just so rewarding and fulfilling. But the other is to actually create art. I can't, and I say this about my entrepreneurial career too, I'm not an idea guy. I don't have the ideas, but I'll take an idea and execute it. With photography, to me, it's easier because I'm more about the composition. I'm not going to create this piece out of thin air. I'm going to see something that's appealing and try to capture it and do something with it. That's just more my speed, and that's the role I fill in the business world and in, I guess, in the art world, if you will. So I'd love to just take time to explore that and make it a little more accessible to folks if anyone's even interested in seeing it. But, the other part of the question, I think if you've created anything, you have a much greater appreciation for what it takes and what goes into it. So for example, I understand photography because I do it, and I know what it takes to create that perfect image, and I have a much deeper appreciation for what was going on behind the scenes in all the prep work and everything, getting ready for that moment where that image was captured. I think I have a greater appreciation for that. Is that any other part of your question I didn't answer?
Well, you made me ask another question.
Go ahead. That's fair.
You make photographs that are lovely when you
Thank you.
travel. Do you make photographs when you were at home in Milwaukee?
I did, and I don't now, but my, and again, I'm repeating everything that you can read in this artist statement, but how I got into it is my dad and I was kind of into trains because I was a geeky engineering type kid. And so after church, on almost every Sunday, my mom and my sister would go do their thing, and my dad and I would run all around Milwaukee with our cameras, taking 35 millimeter slides. And back then in the day, when you took your slides, it took like 2 weeks to get it back. First you had to take the whole roll, which could take a month because it was expensive and we didn't have any money. And then it'd take another 2 weeks to get it back. And if you didn't like that shot, like, well, I gotta wait till, it was, now you get this instant gratification, point, click, I don't like it, filter it, whatever, retake, boom. We didn't have that back then. So, I took a lot of stuff around Milwaukee. Even my mom would drive me around. I did all the old warehouses, and when the breweries were going, like Schlitz was going out of business, I was taking all these photos of it just on its dying days. And I just don't do that now. So that's another part of the phase in my life that I'm in right now is more about executing on the business side and things like that. And I guess I sacrifice some of the hobbies and the fun stuff. But that'll eventually change. The one thing I've noticed, I go to all these places and it's really easy to take, how can you take a bad photograph of the Eiffel Tower, right? Even in the fog or whatever, it looks great. But, we were talking earlier, even in your own backyard, when I was at Valpo, I took tons of slides. I would run all over Valpo, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night if there was fog or this or that. And so I actually did a bit of that while I was here. So wherever you are, you're going to be able to find things, especially with photography, that you can create, and you don't have to fly around the world and have the most amazing subject matter to come up with something that's really fulfilling. We won't end this early, so we're going to keep going. Yeah.
What drew you to the picture of the man over there?
Yeah, so this is a great artist, and so one of the things I'm involved with is a thing called a group called the Contemporary Art Society, and it's an auxiliary of the Milwaukee Art Museum. So it's a whole bunch of us. It's maybe 200 people that like contemporary art, as opposed to maybe just photography or just fine art or whatever other mediums there are. And the Contemporary Art Society every year takes a trip, and we go to a destination. In this case, it was New York, and we saw collectors in their homes. We saw private collections. We did curator-led museum tours, and we did some artist studios, including this artist named Oliver Herring, who created this piece. And we were going through his studio. He does sculpture. He does some photography. But really, he's an experiential artist, so he creates experiences. So he has these things called task parties, where you'll get a room of about this many people together. He'll put a whole bunch of Post-it notes in a basket, and everyone has to pick up a Post-it note. And one might say, find 3 other people and start a game of euchre, right? And the other might say, go mop up the floor. And the other one might say this. And then he videos the whole thing, and everyone's doing these tasks for like 2 hours. It's really just a very interesting art form. Well, this stemmed from a cross between his photography and his tasking. So the story behind this piece, it's called Chris After Hours of Spitting Food Dye. He was at a dinner in either Austin or San Antonio. This guy was at the dinner table. He was a helicopter pilot that was going back and forth. I think his wife and kids were in Texas, but he was getting deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever at the time. And Oliver said, oh, I've got to photograph you, but I don't just go out and take your photograph. We have to come up with this experience. So we had the guy in a white t-shirt lay on the ground in like 45-degree weather and spit yellow and blue food dye up in the air and just let it splatter on himself and land all over his shirt. And when he stood up after that experience, this is the result. So, I mean, it's a striking photograph. It's great to look at, but it has a really interesting story behind it, right? And so to me, anytime someone comes in my home and they see this in the billiard room, this is the first thing they go to. It's one of the first pieces of art they ask about, and now you've got a story that you can tell more than just, oh yeah, isn't it neat looking, right? Did that answer your question? I saw another hand, but I don't know. Yeah.
This one with the outlet here, do you know if that was done for the photograph?
Yes.
Or was it-
So this is an artist. His name is Vic Muniz. He's a South American artist. He does large-scale pieces, and then in this case, he created this set. So if you come look at it later, Greg, point the truck out up the top center, above that little clump of trees. Right there, that's a huge mining truck, like the size of the length of this room. So he took mining equipment on a strip mine in South America and drew an outlet, essentially, by moving the dirt around and carving the dirt and building ridges and whatever trenches. And then he went up in a helicopter, took the shot, which you see here, created 10 or 12 of them, so it's an addition of 10 or 12, and then destroyed the set. So, I mean, it's a photographic work of an art creation that he created just for the photograph, which I thought was pretty interesting, and it's just neat to look at. And they're actually, of the 10 or 12 that are in the world, two are in Wisconsin. One's with the Kohlers up near Sheboygan, and then one's here now, so there's only one in Wisconsin. But I thought that was kind of interesting, too. Is this what you guys wanted to talk about? Yeah? Okay, should we keep going a little bit? Yes.
Do you have favorite places to collect, or just whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, at first it was whatever happens, happens, and wherever you could go, and I overpaid for a lot of the stuff, which I guess is okay, because it's, you know, for the most part, stuff I like. But now I've gotten a lot better at kind of honing in, so I do have a few dealers that are looking out for me. But this art advisor, I can't underestimate finding someone that knows about the art market that you trust and employing their advice. I mean, it was free for me for up until just a few months ago. It was, you know, the curators, the assistant curators, fellow collectors that either have time to go to all these auctions or scour the results. And so those people, and in this world, at least the art world, what I'm finding is we're all friends. We all want to help each other. It's not like it's you win and I lose. You know, a great example, I was at Art Expo in Chicago a few weeks ago with this art advisor and a very good friend of mine who's a fellow collector. And we saw this Rauschenberg. It was an original piece. It was unbelievable, one of his original collages at a ridiculously low price, like a 1/5 of what you would expect it to be. And the art advisor is, buy it now. And so Eugene and I, I'm like, well, I want it. He goes, I want it too. I'm like, okay, you buy this and I'm going to buy the next one that we find. You know, it's that type of thing. And either of us would have been happy with the other person having it. You know, so what I find is it's not competitive. Everyone's just trying to help each other. And who doesn't love giving advice? So I just, you know, suck in all that advice I can, right? I mean, so. And now auctions, typically you get better deals, I think, at auctions. There's just less people involved. I was talking about this auction house in Chicago. It's called Leslie Hinman. You know, everyone's heard of Sotheby's. Everyone's heard of Christie's if you want the ridiculous expensive stuff. Leslie Hinman has some really reasonable things for like $100, $200 of, you know, artists that we've all heard of. And they take these estates and they strip out the art and they bring them into the auction house. I know museums that go to there to buy art because it's such a good deal. Now that won't last forever, but it's certainly going to last the next couple of years. So, Leslie Hinman, there was just one on Monday. A Roy Lichtenstein sculpture that was about this size. It was an edition piece, but it went for a ridiculously low amount of money. Yes?
Could you talk about the Frank era chairs?
Yeah, those are actually pretty cool. I bought those from the Milwaukee Art Museum, and we'll just, I know it says don't touch, but it's okay. So they're corrugated cardboard chairs. Does anyone not know who Frank Gehry is? He's an architect. He designed the Guggenheim Museum in Bilboa. He designed Disney Hall in Los Angeles. He does those titanium buildings with all the weird angles. But back in, you have Pritzker Hall in Chicago that he did. Yes, exactly. Well, back before then, he was just dabbling around, and he did some furniture designs. And he did a series of furniture made out of corrugated cardboard. All right, now it looks like it'd be really fragile and everything. And he was experimenting with structure because he was an engineer architect as well as with aesthetics. And so how strong do you think this is? It's made out of cardboard.
Really strong.
Well, there's a photo of 4 of these chairs with a Volkswagen Bug with each of the tires on the chairs, and it's supporting the car. It's ridiculously strong, but it's just really cool. I learned the hard way that I have to have these on pedestals at my home. I used to have them on the floor, and then next thing you know, people are sitting in them and playing around. Now that they're on pedestals, people actually use them as coat hangers, so I don't know. But again, to me, I got these at an auction. They're cool. They have a great story behind them. I love architecture from my engineering days, and it just was a really neat story.
Andy, I bet you don't have cats.
Alex cats?
Cats.
Oh, cats.
We have more people that want those for their cats.
C-A-T-S. I don't have
Try to
cats.
post.
Cats would destroy this in maybe a few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have cats here in the museum either, do you?
At least not during the show.
Yeah, great. What else do you want to talk about?
What's your favorite work just in this room?
It's probably the Oliver Herring, just because it's so unique. And I know the artist. I'm friends with the artist. A friends on Facebook. I mean, but it's just cool, and it's cool knowing what was behind the art and all of that. And you all know my least favorite already, so I don't have to go into that. Yeah.
Does knowing the artist have any effect on your
Oh,
purchasing?
it does. In fact, knowing whoever's behind whatever it is has a huge effect on me personally. I was just at a talk yesterday about philanthropy and how doing good can actually also be good for business. And we talked about this restaurateur in town where I'll go to any of his restaurants because he's always giving back. Anytime you go to an auction in town, he's donating meals, he's doing this, he's in the community and giving back to the community. And then we have someone else that has very similar restaurants that you never see. And it's all about him and his ego, and a bunch of my friends never go there. So it's the same thing, I think, with the artists. Having a personal connection always helps, but more importantly than just having met them, I mean, I met a lot of people I don't like. I'm not going to name names, no. But just because you met them isn't that big of a deal. But meeting them and understanding their art and connecting with them is a huge deal. One of the pieces that Greg really wanted, and I would have loved for it to have been sitting right here, is a work by an artist named Tara Donovan. It's called The Bluffs. It's essentially 10,000 buttons glued together, and it looks like it's a piece of stalagmite or coral or whatever. It's just really cool. She does these what's the word? They look like they occur in nature, like a stalagmite or whatever. And she does them out of basic materials, straws, buttons, etc. Well, the best thing about her isn't that, this piece has gone so much up in value or this or that. It's neat to look at. She's such a real, genuine, nice person. If you met her, you'd never guess she was the most famous living artist, right? I mean, she's just so easy to be with and connect with. So, yeah, I'm going to buy more of her art because I like her. And I like what she's doing. I like how she makes herself accessible and all of that. And she actually, and maybe it's a good thing it wasn't here because she was at a wedding in Milwaukee last weekend and came over for an after party at my house so I could take a picture with her and her piece in its natural habitat. And it would have been here, and so I would have missed that opportunity. And it's also 350 pounds and really hard to move. Yes?
Okay, you said that you keep saying in your engineering days, so you are obviously an engineering student here, but what do you still?
No, I learned through my internships and through my undergrad and master's in engineering because the job market was really soft, so I had to get a master's degree back then. That I hated engineering. I mean, I tried everything. I hated all of it, so I prefer the business world. So I've never really worked a day in my life after graduation as an engineer, so that's why I say that. I value the degree. I value everything I learned. I value the discipline because nobody graduates from this place as an engineer being lazy, right? So instilled great discipline, great work ethic, great problem-solving skills. I just deploy those in other areas right now. Nothing against engineers, right? Sorry, guys.
They're all over the place, yeah.
So the art world can be pretty snooty, and so just having to know a lot of history, the provenance of works, and
I don't even know what the word Provence means.
yeah,
But
exactly.
okay.
So how did you get around that?
Now you sound like Greg. He used like 20 words I didn't understand in my introduction. I'm like, what?
How did you get around that?
Well,
How did you find it not so intimidating?
Yeah, and it can be intimidating. When you talk to, anything can be an intimidation. And if you talk to some subject matter experts in anything and you don't know that much about it, it can be scary. So I try to find people that use everyday language. I mean, I could sit in here, I couldn't even begin to talk about this piece the way, say, a Brady Roberts, who's the curator of the Milwaukee Art Museum, could. But the thing I like about Brady is even though he could spew out all of these crazy words that no one understands, instead he'll say colorful, clean lines, whatever, stuff that I can relate to. And so those are the people that I hang out with. I see people that talk way, way, way above my head, and I just, you know what, I'm never going to get at that level, and I don't even need to be at that level. It would do nothing for me, so I just don't hang out with those people. Right? That's just me,
Say, Andy?
Yes, sir.
Now, I see you have the Andy Warhol painting, and you also have the shoe drawing over there.
I do. the shoe was first because it's all I could afford at the time I bought it. So, thing I liked about the shoe is it was an original piece. There were 2 of them at this auction, and the other one went for a lot more than this ended up going for, so I figured I was getting a bargain. I wanted an Andy Warhol. The thing isn't all that appealing to look at, but again, it has an interesting story. That shoe, Andy Warhol really came to fame in the 60s, 70s, 80s, lived until, 1987, I think. That piece is from the 50s, and he was unknown, and he was an illustrator of shoes and clothing, like a design illustrator. So he was drawing these shoes. His mom actually did the inscription, so it's a drawing of a woman's shoe, and beneath it, it says, "Shoe light, shoe bright, first shoe I've seen tonight." That was his mom that actually wrote that, so it's a little bit of a collaboration. And it's an original piece, so I thought, well, I've got to have that. That actually hangs in my closet at home, which might sound degrading, but I think it's appropriate because it's a shoe. That Campbell's soup hangs in my kitchen because it's soup. That's where it belongs, right?
Okay, the next question then. What do you have hanging in your bathroom?
Well,
Next question.
at the moment,
Yeah.
some dirty underwear. And it's like, no.
Error.
I tell you, the latest piece I bought for my bathroom is an Indiana artist. I'm going to forget his name. I think his last name is Brown. And it's reclaimed porcelain from a toilet that he carved into a pair of white briefs. Which I thought was interesting and fitting, and it's sitting right above the toilet on the wall. And it's just cool, and it's reclaimed, and it's edgy. I mean, he takes stone and he takes paving blocks and then makes art out of them. So he takes all this 100-year-old reclaimed material and makes art. And so, it was like $500, which didn't totally break the bank, and it's cool and it's kitschy, and everyone that looks at it laughs. It's like that story we told tonight at dinner, right? Do you guys remember that? I should have it. When they asked President Clinton before he was president that interview, they said boxers or briefs. It was a very inappropriate question at the time. Well, they asked Bob Dole the same question the next week, and they said boxers or briefs. He said, depends. Oh, sorry. Only this crowd gets this. Sorry. It's like a... Anyway, where were we? What else is in my bathroom? So there's actually a piece like Vic Muniz. There's a David D. Marseille piece, another artist who does very small-scale editions. It's a piece about that size. It's a photograph of people walking through a museum gallery with giant shards of glass all around them. He set up that scene, took the photo, destroyed the set, and there's only 10 of those photos in the world, and I have that above the bathtub. So my bathroom has some really fun, interesting stuff. This also hangs in my bathroom when it's at home. It's a Tom Wesselmann maquette, so it's 3D, and it's after the style of Matisse and Jasper Johns. So he was actually invoking the ghosts of other artists when he created this. So Tom Wesselmann is also the guy that did this piece. So those are in the bathroom at home. Yeah, you can put art anywhere, right?
Well, it's a captive audience.
Yeah, not nowhere to go, huh? What else? I'm supposed to go. Actually, we're about wrapping up, I guess. What else? Yes. Ma'am.
Embarrassing question for me, but why is Jeff Koons so great?
Jeff Koons is not that great, in my opinion. He, like Damien Hirst, is, I don't think, all that great compared to other artists today. James Sienna, who did that piece over there, it's called the Bosphorus Lines, and it's got all those really thin lines, I think is a much better artist than either of them. But they hit it big, they had a great dealer, they turned their art into a business, and probably had some lucky breaks along the way. So everything they touch now, Damien Hirst probably not anymore like he used to be, everything Jeff Koons touches turns to gold. Like Andy Warhol, the art isn't all that great, but he hit it and they just latched onto him, and it is what it is. I wish I would have bought some of that way back then, but it's little porcelain balloons tied into dogs and really basic stuff that I don't know, I just don't think it has all that much creativity, but they're paying millions of dollars for these things.
At least I'm not foolish.
No, I agree. I agree. All right, anything else? One last question maybe before we wrap, or are we done? Yes.
Sorry, I have so many questions. What is your favorite piece in the Brauer outside of your collection?
I really like the George Rickey sculpture that you have. So you have a sculpture. It's by George Rickey, who's this guy again. And instead of two parallel lines, it's three that move in three-dimensional form. It's on display once in a while, and I just love that stuff. I think it's again, engineering meets design meets art, and it's very creative that he was able to come up with this, and very precise. I mean, these things are exactly balanced, and like the mobiles that Calder did, I think a lot of precision went into them, and to me, that's just really, really cool. So I was very excited when I heard the Brauer had a Rickey.
Probably because of your engineering.
What's that?
I said probably because of your engineering.
I know that dumb engineering background keeps popping up, doesn't it? Oh.
No, but I mean, he was an engineer.
Yes. Bertoia, Calder, Rickey, I mean, that is where engineering meets the aesthetic, and they were the masters at that. Well, I really appreciate everyone's time. I know maybe we went 5 minutes over than what we should, so I apologize, but thanks a lot, and we're going to be around just hanging out, so if people have questions they were afraid to ask in front of the whole crowd, ask away. Thank you.